So we will today we will present the functionality he already have prepared. So the first demonstration of this functionality devoted for migration or transferring data between sources, and also we discuss whether it's the most suitable way of transferring data between sources or not. Unfortunately, as I already mentioned, Ricardo is not able to join for today, but we agreed with him and with Felix from Magento Order Management to discuss and to schedule a dedicated meeting tomorrow and to discuss whether the approach we chose as the best one from the usability point of view. So let me share with you. I will share my screen now. So let's get back to our agenda. So we will continue to discuss all the stories we have currently in the Milestone 2 backlog. So, and the list of the stories you can see on my screen. And on a previous meeting, we were talking about the source level reservation. And now Sergey is working on some prototype, and actually not really prototype, but the extension point which needed for Paul. And Paul is going to implement a working solution because the reservation on the level of sources needed on his project. And after that, this contribution could be made to for MSI as well. So we are syncing up whether how this reservation can be implemented, what statuses of this reservation could be added, and whether this mechanism of source level reservation should be optional, should be switchable or not. So today let's talk about other stories we have in a backlog, and today we will discuss the possibility of support multi-sourcing functionality for bundle product, for group product. Valery will make some demonstration and will describe these stories a little bit. After that, we'll talk a little bit about the configuration and source level configuration and new API, which currently which we don't currently have in MSI, because currently all the configuration we have is a stock level configuration, and we just make a proxy. We proxy in all the call to existing catalog inventory configuration, so we don't have own API for this, and we even don't have storage. So we proxy to the legacy table, and after that we will discuss the story. The story probably Anton Krill would be interested the most. So the migration between sources, because we already have the working prototype prepared by Ricardo, and we will discuss whether this prototype is whether it's actually desirable state from usability perspective, especially from usability perspective. Whether it would be straightforward for merchant, how to migrate existing data after the migration to Magento 2.3 with MSI on board, whether it's the most suitable way to migrate from single stock inventory to multi-stock one. So Slava will make a presentation, and because as I already mentioned, Ricardo unfortunately can join and make this presentation by himself, and we will discuss whether there are some drawbacks, flaws, or some changes should be introduced to improve this process. So this is actually agenda of today's meeting. So Valery, will you start?
Yes, I can start.
Do you need a screen to share?
No, generally maybe in the finally I show some product forms. So regarding grouped product and bundle product, my opinion, we need to include these stories in next milestone and finish it as quick as possible. Because as you know, we created own multi-source inventory multi-dimension indexer with possibility to store the data per dimension. In our case, dimension in stock. But since we don't have support for grouped and bundle products in new indexes, we need to use legacy index for these types of products. And that means that we cannot disable legacy catalog inventory model. And as you remember, it was one of our main goals, replace legacy catalog inventory model with new one. So a few words about index implementation of this type of products. I have a small investigation, and regarding to grouped products, I don't see a huge concerns. It will be pretty familiar with the configurable product index. We need to check all of children, and if one of them is saleable, that means grouped product is saleable. I have only one notice concern about default quantity for child products. We can choose default quantity for some child of grouped products, because generally it looks like stock option, but it's not source option. For example, minimal quantity is 5. For me, from merchant perspective, does not matter where will the delivery came from.
Mm-hmm.
So need to think about how to move this option on stock level. Yeah, can you share screen?
Yes, you can.
I mean this. So I create bundle and I can provide default quantity. Or user defined. But generally it looks like we need to take into account this option on stock level.
Mm-hmm.
So index will be pretty familiar to configurable product with one more rule, like quantity per stock. Do you have enough quantity in this stock?
Now where we store this default quantity?
Looks like, I did not check, but looks like it's mean if I choose some option, this quantity will be default for shopping cart.
But now, is there any other configuration option which should be specified on the level of stock?
For grouped product, looks like not. Also need to check some shippings like ship together, ship separately, but generally for grouped product is only one concern. I will go ahead. But in bundle case, we will have more sophisticated rules because bundle consists of options. And options is a list of some is a set of some products, and options can be marked as required. So we need to follow at least two rules. First rule, for example, all of requirement options should have at least one saleable product. All of requirement options. But if we don't have any required options, it means that we need to have at least one options with a saleable product. I can share screen again. Grouped product form. So also we have default quantity for bundle product. And for bundle product, we have one more options like ship together or ship separately. And looks like these options will be affect can we deliver product from different source, or we need different only from same source. First, ship bundle items together separately, and if we create options, drop down option. So you can see that we have required options, we have option ship bundle together, we have default quantity, so, and we need to check all of combination of these products. So generally it looks like a big story, and we need to use some temporal table during indexation in the same way as now is used in for grouped product mechanism will be more simple. So I don't know. We can mark a grouped product as M size and as large size.
So another benefit of implementation group and bundle product support would be a possibility to disable default source or use default sources any other sources we have. So as Valery mentioned, currently we support bundle and group product for default source only in a single stock mode, and sometimes we return to the discussion of a topic: why don't we allow to assign default source to other stocks, or why the default stock can assign any other stock, any other source except default one. And this question was raised by Anton Kirill recently, and not so far from Alessandro made an investigation regarding it. But actually, the main thing which prevent us from removing this limitation is that currently we are using index, single stock index for default stock, and we are using the index for default stock because existing index created by catalog inventory supports the indexation for bundle and group products. As soon as we will create own support for bundle and group product indexation, we would need any more existing indexation provided by catalog inventory. So we can drop that indexation. We can decouple from the catalog inventory indexation, and we can drop the limitation we currently have for default source and default stock. And default source and default stock could be considered, could be treated the same way as any other source and stock in a system. Before that, we have a special meaning and special limitation for these entities in a system. That's actually why we need to boost the priority for supporting multi-source capabilities for both group and bundle product. Because before that, we make MSI and the new inventory mechanism to be coupled to catalog inventory existing implementation, so that it means that we can just dismantle catalog inventory module, and because we are still reusing part of this functionality, and especially indexation mechanism for bundle and group products, and another stuff is the configuration. So thank you, Valery, for presentation of the stories devoted for group and bundle products. Do we have any particular question, maybe from Anton?
Well, I don't have specific question for the bundled and more organizational question. So when we discussed this, like, did you discuss it with Mark or any other product owner responsible for catalog or catalog relation, catalog APIs?
What exactly you mean? Like, discuss the possibility whether we need to support group or bundle, or
no, not support. How to exactly implement what shipping and sourcing in the features should be supported. So, because I think there is a lot of business requirements there that have to be. Some of them have to be supported. Some of them have to be reviewed. Is it just a stage of investigation? Was it discussed? Was it requested by product team?
So we all the discussion regarding the complex product support we had at the time when we were working in core, so they're a little bit dated.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, we planned to make a calculation, for example, for bundle or for group product on a level of source.
Mm-hmm.
But currently, when we started to, so for example, it was not possible to deliver some variation of bundle from one source and another variation from another options from another source. So when we're making a calculation how many bundle product we have, we're supposed to calculate the variations allocated just on the level of the single source only.
Mm-hmm.
That was a simplification introduced to make a single source, multi-source inventory support for bundle and group product that time. And after that, we didn't make any changes to these business rules. And actually, that's why I thought that this grooming will confirm or not these assumptions.
Yeah, well, I think we definitely need the product input for this. I would close the question before we talk to would be the best. I think at least Misha Koto and Mark Brinton should be involved.
Yeah, but the last conversation we had with Mark regarding this topic, so Mark was okay that bundle product would be calculated on the level of source, just for the sake of simplification.
Okay, understood. By the way, are you familiar with sourcing engine implementation on order management product?
Briefly. So we had discussion about this with Felix, but I did not touch and play around with this functionality, so I just heard about it.
Okay, yeah, I think in addition, I'll forward you and Valery some documentation about sourcing engine, how it's implemented in OMS. I think there is some useful information also for complex product support, and we have to make sure that we take it into account for this implementation.
By the way, tomorrow I will have meeting with Felix, so I will recap the complex product support on this meeting as well. Okay, so looks like this all at least on this meeting regarding the complex product support, because we don't have anybody representing the product organization, so we will continue this conversation on a later grooming session. And today, for now, we can switch to another topic. And Slava, are you ready to make some presentation of transferring data from sources?
Yes, I'm ready. Hi, everybody. I will share my screen. Here we are. First of all, I will create new source, additional source. And now I go to the product grid. Here we have several products, some simple, virtual and downloadable. And first of all, I will try to use bulk action, assign inventory source to all products. What I selected all. And here we are, we have my new created source for. I check in this and click assign sources. As we may see that the source 4 assigned it to all 5 products that we have. Without any quantity, of course, I just assigned it. I may open any of it and see that it's really assigned. Here we are in assigned sources, we have source 4. Now I will put some quantity and save. Next option in this section, we may unassign. And for example, here we have several sources for product 2 and 3. I will use Unassigned inventory source. Okay. And for example, I want to unassign source 1 and 2. Here we are, we see that source 1 is still assigned to another products, but products 2 and 3 have no assignment to source 1 and to source 2. Next, what we have is transfer inventory to source. I will use the previous products, what I used, downloadable product 1, and I will choose option transfer inventory. I have inventory on source 4, and I will choose, for example, inventory to default source. Here we may see that inventory from source 4 transferred to default source. I may also check all of them and try to do the same. As we may see that on other sources there is no any quantity, and all when product have some inventory, it's moved to default source, like product this first one and last one. We may do opposite. Let's move inventory to source 2. Here we see that from default source, inventory moved to source 2. It's the same as here. From default source, inventory moved to source 2. Only one thing what is left, what already we talked with Igor, that indexes are not recounted for default stock. And but it's
yeah, so this looks like a bug that currently we don't make any reindexation after the reassignment, but I already talked with Ricardo, so we will fix that bug. But currently, on the scope of this grooming meeting, I wanted to discuss the usability of this operation of the reassignment. Can you please return the screen sharing, because it will help us to discuss, or I can. Because currently, like, we have 3 different operation of assign, unassign, and the transfer inventory. And the question, and actually Ricardo implemented it exactly as it was described in an epic. I just dropped the epic reference into the Zoom chat. But
yeah, I may open it here. I have it here.
But from the so as you can see, there is like assign to source, unassigned from source, and the transfer inventory. But like I have some maybe doubts that all this operation needed from the merchant point of view, because it's hard to imagine for me when merchant need to unassign non-zero operation, because usually probably the main steps which will merchant follow after the upgrade from Magento 2.2 to Magento 2.3 with MSI on board, and when he would like to start using the MSI, he will make a bulk migration from default source to some newly created source. And after that migration, you will see that we don't make an assignment from the default source. So for example, merchant will create this new source. He will make the transfer inventory to this new source. And after that inventory would be transferred, he will still have default source as with a zero quantity. So after that, he can unassign all the data from the default source just to remove this default source zero from the grid, from all the grids and from all the reports. And this is actually what probably most of the merchant will do after the migration to Magento 2.3 with MSI on board if they would like to use multi-source inventory functionality. But from my perspective, the assign and unassigned source to inventory is not an independent operation, but sounds like a property of transfer operation. So, for example, merchant can apply the transfer. Along with that, he would like to unassign data from the default source. And also, I don't know whether there are valid business reasons to have an assigned inventory source operation which just create an empty source items, because empty source items currently don't influence the salability quantity, because the source item will in the aggregation will just bring the zero value, so they will not affect anyhow the salability quantity. So that was a question I wanted to discuss with Ricardo, but Ricardo currently is not on a call, and we will have the separate discussion with him and with Felix tomorrow afternoon. But I would like to raise this question today with all those who are on a call today. Alessandra and Anton, maybe you have your opinion regarding that, whether it makes sense to support like this operation, like whether it makes sense to differentiate the assign, unassign out of migration inventory, or it makes sense to have just a migration inventory with some properties like an assignment and assignment. Because currently, for example, if merchant will make an unassigned operation from some non-zero source, like for example, merchant has some quantity of particular product on default source, like 10 items, and if he will make unassigned from this source, he will just lose all the data. That's all. And it would not be possible to restore somehow this data. I can show it. Or like currently we have the default source for these three products, and if we will choose to unassign inventory. Oh, sorry. So I believe that the system should follow the Poka-Yoka principle. So it should not be possible just to easily break the system, because if a merchant will apply some calls unwisely, and the system should be quite straightforward and easily to use. But for example, now choosing some product, like it could be a state for single stock merchant who upgraded to MSI. So he sees that there are some additional operation appeared, and he decided just to unassign inventory source. Why not? And here we say that we are making an unassignment from the default source. We making an unassignment. And we see here that we totally lost the data for all these products. So as for me, there is no valid business case for merchant to make an unassignment for non-zero source. So maybe it makes sense to make an unassigned operation after we made a transfer, just to remove this, for example, like this default source quantity 0. If merchant don't want to bother anymore with this 0 quantity. So actually, that was a question I wanted to raise and discuss from the usability perspective. Anton, maybe Anton left us. Yeah, actually, that so Lori dropped a question. Shouldn't it check if they try to unassign with positive inventory to recommend mass transfer unassigned? Yeah, maybe, but actually, like from my perspective, I don't see any business case why merchant can want to make an unassignment from the non-zero source at all, because this actually means that he want to drop existing inventory, not to move to another source, but just drop it at all.
The problem, I think, main problem is that unassigning a source which still has some items assigned leaves the system inconsistent. So as far as the product has quantities in other sources, this shouldn't be a problem. But if the merchant want to unassign the only source associated to a product, this leaves the system inconsistent, and I would prevent this kind of inconsistency to happen. So probably, I think that there may be scenarios in which a merchant want to unassign a source which still has quantities. Maybe yes. Some sources get damaged, so along with all the product quantities, so there may be a case in which in reality the merchant have the need to unassign. But I think that in that case he should and he or she can transfer the quantities, because say that the quantities have been destroyed along with the source. But I think that having a product without any source assigned is not consistent anymore. So probably this should bring to disabling the product or something like that. So the first and easier thing to do is probably forcing the merchant to transfer or to at least assign a second source to the product before unassigning it. So some checks, some validation checks that prevent unassigning the only source assigned to a product. But I'm not domain expert, so probably I would ask Mark for real use cases. But I agree that leaving the system inconsistent, I want to leave the system inconsistent. But I prefer not to leave the system inconsistent.
But why do you consider that product which is not assigned to any source introduce some inconsistency to this?
No, I mean, no, if the product is saleable and at a certain point I remove all the sources, I don't have any more available quantity for that product. I mean, inconsistent. By inconsistent, I mean that the product becomes not saleable. This can be a real case, a real use case. So, but I'm not eligible to say it is. So, by inconsistent, I mean that you lose any possibility to sell that product, because you do an assignment of all quantities from that source, and that product is not saleable anymore.
Yeah, and it's not saleable, and we're just
not
losing the
restockable.
data, so it's not restorable. So you
Yeah.
can't get this data back anymore, because potentially, if the data was transferred to another source,
Yeah.
you can potentially make the opposite operation and make the transfer back.
Yeah.
To get that quantity back. But if we just unassign, we just lose the data.
Yeah, we lose the data and we don't.
And yeah, so if merchant made this operation kind of by mistake because he did not really understand what does it mean to make an unassigned, so he would be in trouble because he need to restore the data from the backup.
So maybe forcing to transfer that quantity to another source is a way to preserve at least.
Yeah, that's actually what I mean, that whether we need to support all this reoperation, or it makes sense just to have a transfer inventory to source. And also another question, whether we need to have the assign inventory to source operation, like this one. What it gives to us, let's so what it gives to us, for example, you see that these products are not assigned to any source yet. And if we assign inventory to source, we will just introduce the empty source item. So the source item with a 0 quantity. Let's introduce the assignment to the new source. And you see that we just added the 0 source item. There's also another question whether this operation is really suitable for merchant, because this operation does not affect anyhow the saleable quantity. So, like what?
But at this point, with the source, with the new source assigned to these products, you can perform an import and assign quantities. Otherwise, you can't.
But in import, you no need this operation for import, because you can make independent import, and this source item would be created with a real quantity.
Even if products are not assigned to the source specified in the import.
Yep. So okay. You can create now in new inventory import export functionality. You can make import for particular source only, and we will create all the needed source item.
Okay. So, yeah.
So that's also a question. So whether we need to create this. Are there any thoughts about this?
This operation that you just did is equivalent to import these products with the
with the 0 quantity.
0 quantity. So it's a bit redundant. Okay, it's different user experience, but we already have this this kind of possibility. Yes. I think that we should figure out which are the real use cases merchants can have. I mean, I understand the need to transfer some quantities from a source to another, and then I understand the need of unassigning a source. Say that you are moving your goods from one source to another. This is a real use case.
Mm-hmm.
But the unassignment is I confess it's a strange use case that I don't manage to imagine in reality why it should happen in reality. An unassignment without transferring quantities and losing all the information. This is but I think, yes, this is my opinion, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that we should validate against the domain expert in this case.
So, Alessandra,
so the mass assignment of sources with zero quantity is a redundant operation that we can perform with an import.
Mm-hmm.
So probably, yes, we can reason a bit about these use cases.
We would have a dedicated meeting devoted for this topic with Ricardo and with Felix, because I also wanted to involve Felix into and ask him to jump into discussion about this topics, because he has an experience working on order management, and it's pretty similar functionality. So if you would have a spare time, Alessandra and Lori, I will send you an invite to this meeting. It's supposed to be tomorrow. Actually, for now, I don't know the particular time. I will ping the guys because to sync up what's the intersection of the spare time we have all together, and we'll send an invite to all of you.
Yes, please.
So looks like we have just 5 minutes left, and another topic is pretty big to fit in these 5 minutes. So I propose to finish today's meeting. I will share the recording of today's meeting in MSI Slack channel, because maybe there would be guys who will share their opinion on this. Because the functionality of reassignment is pretty important for us, especially because it would be especially important for the onboarding on MSI, because we consider that all the existing installation are single stock and they somehow need to be migrated to the multi-stock. And if we will provide the really straightforward and easy way to migrate to the multi-stock inventory, that will definitely ease the process and will make the process of migration and the satisfaction of merchants who use the MSI much higher.
Igor, I just want to say one word, that when I was testing this PR, I was expecting that when we assign some sources, like we do, for example, when we create configurable products, you assign source and you, after this, immediately set some items, set the inventory on this source.
Mm-hmm.
But when I saw that only it's just assign source with zero quantity, it's for me it was also sound not so properly on. Still, you would need manually add some inventory to each or do imports, but still you have work to do.
Yeah, so this is not kind of final state. It's kind of beginning state or intermediate state. So merchants still need to make some operation manually, whether it's make a manual update of the quantity or after that make the import process. But if he needs to make an import process, he can make the import process without this assignment operation at all.
Yeah, straight away. Or only if it is it possible to really, when you assign source for example, if you want to manage with hundreds of products, for example, and you want to assign them all for some source, maybe it would be reasonable to set quantity for the source, and then it will be useful. Probably.
Yeah. So, for example, like in the creation of configurable product, you can specify the default quantity which would be assigned for all the products at the time of assignment.
Yeah, exactly. Then it has sense, sort of, from business point of view.
Mm-hmm.
That's all from me.
Same with the mass transfer. I was also expecting a possible option of setting how much I want to transfer if I don't want to move all of it. So say I have 1,000 products in one warehouse and I only want to mass move 500 to another warehouse. I'm not sure if that was long term.
But that's correct, Lori. But what to do, for example, if we are making a bulk reassignment with like 3 different products, and each of these products has different quantity, like 100, 200, and 300, like for SKU1, SKU2, and SKU3. So it's really hard to make this deviation because the quantity could be different. So we are thinking about this, how to make it more usable to split the inventory, but actually we did not find how to split it at the time of the bulk operation, because you can make a split on the level of one product, but it's really hard to imagine how can we do it on the level of bulk operation when we are working with many products in the scope of one operation.
Makes sense, yeah.
Okay, guys, looks we are running out of time. I will send you an update with the time of the meeting with Ricardo and Felix.
For that meeting tomorrow, I didn't know if you saw my chat.
Of course.
Yeah, tomorrow's the 4th, so just FYI, I don't know how many are affected.
And Happy Independence Day.
Oh yeah.
And of course, we will share the recording of tomorrow's meeting because fortunately, have an Independence Day and a vacation. But we will share, so it will help to keep you updated afterwards.
Yeah, feel free to still add me to the invite. If it's just in the middle of the day, I may just sit there with a cocktail.
Of course. So thank you for your time, guys, and see you tomorrow. And for Lori, see you the day after tomorrow. Bye.
Hi.
Bye.
Bye.